Welcome to the New Jersey Association for College Admission Counseling College Fair and this session on New Jersey financial aid. We're so excited to have you here participating in this event. We have some fantastic schools getting ready to give you some wonderful information. My name is Greg and I'll be your facilitator. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. Your camera and your microphone are off so the panelists cannot see or hear you. Please use the Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen to type any questions to our presenters at any time. If you had a particular question for a certain school, please include that in your question as well. Remember, this is just one of many different sessions taking place tonight and over the next few days. Be sure to check out the entire schedule on the website. This presentation is being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/New Jersey, and I'll put that in the chat. And by the way, presenters can also be putting information in the chat for you, so make sure you check back early and often for information there. I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter tonight, Stockton University.
All right. Thank you, Greg, and welcome everybody. Good evening. My name is Christopher Connors. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at Stockton University, and I'm here to present on financial aid for New Jersey residents. How I organize this presentation, how I usually like to present is I usually like to collect and organize a lot of the questions that we receive either at our university, at open houses, or on the road, just common questions that we get from students and parents. The first most common question is what types of financial aid are offered at your university? And to understand that, I always like to talk about the 4 different types of financial aid that is offered at our university, at most universities that you will be looking at. So 4 different types of financial aid can be organized into 1, as many of you know, scholarships, grants, what we like to refer to as free money. Third one is loans. Not many people see loans as financial aid, but in fact, loans are a type of financial aid, and you are offered loans upfront after submitting a financial aid application, most commonly from the federal government, as well as employment opportunities, otherwise known as federal work study. So where to find it? There really is no one source of financial aid. It doesn't necessarily all come from the university you're looking to apply to. Financial aid can be found from 4 different sources. 1, the biggest source is the federal government. 2 is the state government, which we would focus on tonight. The 3rd, Stockton or the university, as well as private sources. If there's any community scholarships that you might be applying for, receiving for your volunteer work in your local town, community, region, that can be considered private. Financial aid is also sorted into 2 different categories, and I usually like to start I kind of go backwards with this one. One category is known as need-based aid, which is based upon income and assets of you, the student, and your family, whoever's in the household, as well as non-need-based, or simply put, merit-based aid. So let's talk about the different types of categories, knowing what we now know, the sources and the types, okay? So non-need-based aid or merit-based aid is based on a student's achievement or extracurricular community involvement, okay, academics as well. Okay, so we talked about a source of financial aid, one being the university. And here at Stockton, just as an example, we offer merit scholarships, okay? And who I brought along with me is my colleague, my good friend, Heather Medina, who's the Director of Admissions at Stockton, who can inform you of eligibility and criteria for those scholarships.
Yes, certainly. Thanks, Chris. I'm so excited to see a group of families with us tonight. So thanks for joining us. Here at Stockton, we are completely test optional for our review process for admission, as well as our merit-based scholarships. You will simply need to complete the admissions application either through Common App or our web application, and then strategically complete the activity section in the Common application, or simply complete our scholarship survey form. All of these documents are available on our website, and I will put that in the chat. Providing details as far as your involvement, whether it's clubs, organizations, leadership activities that you're involved in, if you've worked a part-time job, or even if you're responsible of your family responsibilities, whether it's raising siblings or working a part-time job to assist with the family. All of these things are taken into consideration, coupled with your GPA. And then we, of course, review and evaluate a student for our merit-based scholarships. So not necessarily is there a separate application that needs to be filed, but you do need to specifically list your activity section. Once we receive that information at the time of review, we do send out the acceptance letter along with the scholarship offer at the time of the initial review process. And so I'll put the email address in the chat so that you'll be able to review our scholarship page. And I'll just turn it right over to Chris again.
All right, thank you so much. And then to jump right into another source, as we talked about, there's the university, there's the state of New Jersey, which we are focusing on this evening for our state residents. So obviously Stockton University is in state. And if you're looking to stay in state, you might be eligible for state aid. One of the examples of non-need merit-based aid, which is kind of similar to a scholarship, you may have heard of the NJACAC program. Okay, if you're coming out of high school and you're in the top % of your high school class, you would be able to attend one of our New Jersey's community colleges tuition free. And if you're able to do so and graduate with your associate's degree and have a GPA of 3.25 or higher, you would then be able to attend one of the four-year public schools with NJACAC 2. Okay, it would not cover tuition, but it is a supplemental program where it can assist a little over $2,000 to assist you with the costs. Okay, as well as private, there are private non-need merit-based scholarships out there that you can apply for, or your son or daughter, your child can apply for. I did list 3 websites: fastweb.com, collegeboard.com, scholarships.com, all great sites that you can begin your scholarship search with. Okay, and then we move to need-based aid. Okay, once again, this is determined by income and assets, the ability to pay for a family. And just to go over some of those sources and the types of aid that are offered, as I said, federal source is the biggest source of them all. Commonly known is the Pell Grant, which is the biggest, the primary source of financial aid if eligible, as well as a direct subsidized loan. Okay, so if you have need, you would be able to get a subsidized loan, which assists with interest. If you're eligible for it, there is no interest while you're in school. Okay, and that is based upon need. For our in-state students, if you look to stay in-state, tuition aid grant, which is offered by the state of New Jersey, as well as what's called the Educational Opportunity Fund grant as well, which is need-based as well. There is a twofold application process for that. One for the admissions office to determine if you're coming from an academically disadvantaged background. And then it comes to my office where we determine if you're financially disadvantaged. But it's an excellent opportunity if eligible. If you think you're eligible, please let us know. We have a supplemental application for that. And going to the university, moving to our university, we have what's called a Promise Grant. So if you have a need, which is determined by the financial aid application, which I'll get into very shortly, this is an excellent opportunity for you to apply for. Okay, so if you're eligible for this grant, you must be a new student, either coming in as a freshman or a transfer. You must be a New Jersey state resident. Okay, so we reward you for staying in state and considering us as a state school. And you must maintain a full-time status, meaning you're taking a certain amount of credits and you intend to graduate in a certain period of time. For instance, new students, typically 4 years. So how's it determined? Based upon need. Okay, if you have $65,000 or less in your adjusted gross income, parents might understand this a little bit better than their student. And it goes by for this coming year, fall 2020 taxes for next fall. That's what we go by, and have an estimated family contribution as determined by the financial aid application, the FAFSA, as part of your 21-22 FAFSA. Okay, for next year's the 22-23 FAFSA. Okay, so if you're a dependent student, we go by your income as well as your parents. If you're an independent student, by age, we would just go solely by your income as the student. Okay, and just make note of these little bullet points. We won't use a negative adjusted gross income. It's not qualified. And parents, if you do not file your taxes, we will treat you as a zero AGI. Okay, so how it works. I'm a very visual person, as Heather likes to know. I usually like to show people. So how it works is, what this does is it covers 100% of your tuition and fees if you're eligible, which is a great opportunity. Okay, after the application of federal, state, and institutional financial aid is applied. Okay, so whatever that difference is, if there is a gap between all those other types of financial aid that you might be eligible for, we then fill in the gap at Stockton. That is our promise to you, that your tuition and fees will be taken care of. Okay, so federal grants and scholarships are applied. As you can see for this student, there's our tuition and fees for this current year, $14,885, not including housing. So do understand that. State grants and scholarships are applied if you're eligible. Okay, and for this example, any Stockton grants and scholarships are also applied. Okay, that's what the student receives from the federal government, the state government, and the institution. And you can see they have a gap from here to the tuition and fees, and that's when the Stockton Promise Grant is applied. Okay, so it fills all the way up, fills the tank all the way up to tuition and fees, and you're good to go. And that is renewable from now until the student graduates. And any private scholarships and loans could be used for additional costs, as I mentioned, if you're living on campus or if you're looking for meals to live on campus, that's where that can apply. So how do I apply for this? You mentioned all the types, all the sources, all the categories. How do I apply for this? It's very simple. If you haven't familiarized yourself yet, since we are in the application period for financial aid, there's two applications. We say to complete the financial aid application, there's two applications. The FAFSA, very commonly known as the free application for federal student aid. It is free. It opened up October 1st, so we're well into the application period, and it collects demographic and financial aid information, financial information from you, the student, as well as parents. Okay, that information is then sent to the federal government, to the state, and then back to the institution, where we compile all what you're eligible for and then send that notification to you after you've been admitted. Okay, and there's also the New Jersey Alternative Financial Aid application for our New Jersey Dreamer students. That application can be found on hesaa.org, and that is an alternative application for those that aren't eligible to file for the FAFSA. So as I said, it's going to take your 2020 tax information, so that should be finished by now. So if the student filed their taxes, they will need to apply using that tax information, as well as their parents' tax information. Studentaid.gov. All right, how much will college cost? And this is very important for our audience tonight. Please know when you're speaking to our financial aid office or any financial aid office, we might have a little different cost than the people that work in the admissions office, but understand where we're coming from. And that's what my job is in this next slide. You have your direct costs. You have your tuition and fees if you're commuting. If you're living on campus, you have your tuition fees, room and board. But we also put into what we factor into your cost is your indirect costs. Okay, things that are not included on your bill, but play a part in the planning process for how you're going to pay for the next year or that year of college. Okay, for example, books and supplies are not on your bill. Okay, but we do want to make sure you have that room to borrow, or any funding can be applied towards that. So we make sure your bill is taken care of, and anything in excess of your bill covers these indirect supplies. Equipment, like a laptop, transportation. Okay, if you're a commuter, we want to make sure you have enough to cover getting to and from classes. Okay, whether you're a commuter or living on campus. And then also miscellaneous personal expenses, which would cover things like a winter coat, things like that. Okay. So consider the cost of attendance. As I said, I'm a very visual person without using any numbers here because it varies where you may be looking to attend. Consider your direct costs as an in-state student looking to stay in-state. Okay. You have your direct costs, your bill, as well as those indirect costs, books and supplies. And then consider going out of state. Okay, out-of-state students, there is a rate for the schools they look to attend, an out-of-state rate. Okay, in most cases, those expenses are a lot more than if you were to stay in-state. So do consider that. Do consider those costs. Okay, so if you look to stay in-state, you are saving a lot. Okay. Another thing I do want to mention about that too is if you're eligible, as you can see, the costs are down. But the aid that you're eligible for by staying in state, you also have the opportunity to increase your funding as well. So there is a very good opportunity staying in state. So let's say if I'm only eligible for so much money, how do I cover that remaining gap? What if I'm not eligible for the Pell Grant or that TAG grant? So very simply, there are some other alternative ways to cover that funding, that gap, okay? You can look into private alternative loans. I know it's not the most attractive option. It is probably the thing that I recommend of last resort. Do the application, see what you're eligible from the federal government, the state government, and the university. After all of that is done, after you kind of figure out how much free money you're getting, then let's look into borrowing. Okay, I recommend everybody to borrow conservatively. The name of the game is just reducing the amount of debt that you incur while you're in school. Okay. And another option, in addition to borrowing, in addition to the student being the borrower, there's also an option for the parent to be a borrower, and that is through the federal government, which is called the Parent Plus loan. Just another option. Like any big expense, be sure to shop around, compare rates, compare repayment terms, fees, things like that. Okay, just another option. And what we also have here at Stockton is a payment plan with our bursar's office where you can easily break down payments throughout each month rather than one giant payment that's due for the semester. We can spread out those payments throughout the semester each month. The earlier you sign up, the smaller the payments will be throughout. And another thing why I recommend it last is because you can't always guarantee this, but we do recommend all students to apply. If I give a goal to any students, it's try to spend 2 hours every week from now until you graduate college, not just high school. But you do that, you do keep that as a goal, and you will certainly yield something that can assist. It could be that thing that assists you with your books. Okay, so do consider that as an option. For any tips and tricks, we do push our social media accounts with our financial aid office. We do a really good job with it. It is useful, valuable information, reminders for, they have tips, tricks, important deadlines coming up, reminders of those deadlines, applications when they open up for scholarships or the financial aid application. So we do recommend everybody to follow us for Facebook, Instagram, as well as Twitter. Okay, that's all I got. And then I think from this point, I will hand it over to my friends from Rutgers University, or Greg.
All right, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna Yunt. I'm an Associate Director for Recruitment and Outreach here at Rutgers University in New Brunswick. So I have a presentation for you guys as well. I will tell you just before we even get started, many of the slides are very similar, right? Which makes sense. We're all on the same page with financial aid for New Jersey. So I'm going to kind of go through some of them fairly quickly and just kind of hit on some points so that I don't end up giving you the exact same presentation. And it looks like I'm still seeing, okay, it looks like I can share and it will end the other one. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So let's continue our chat about financial aid for New Jersey residents. So one of the things that we like to cover as we go through this, important terms. I know we've already heard quite a few of those. Understanding a financial aid offer letter. I have some screenshots in our presentation of what a Rutgers one looks like, just because that's what I have on hand. It'll look a little bit different depending on the different institutions you're looking at. And then just some next steps after you receive an award, where to go from there. So first one, we have touched on this before. Chris did a great job explaining it, but I cannot stress enough. The FAFSA is open. It opened on October 1st. You can complete it now if you are a senior. FAFSA is for US citizens and eligible non-citizens. The FAFSA website does have a list of eligible non-citizens, things like asylee, refugee, if you're interested in taking a look at that. New Jersey alternative financial aid application as well. I know Chris covered this one. Undocumented students can apply for state financial aid. This is huge. You may be able to receive in-state tuition, New Jersey tuition aid grant, which depending on which institution you're looking at attending can be up to $13,000 per year. This is huge. So we want to make sure that every student is applying, completing either the FAFSA or the New Jersey Alternative Financial Aid application. We want to make sure you're being considered for every possible financial aid offer that you might be eligible for. The worst thing they can say is no. So we want to make sure that we get that in. I know here at Rutgers, we do have a priority filing deadline. Ours is December 1st. Many schools do have priority filing deadlines. So as you're completing your applications, you're going to want to take a look at those and make sure that you're completing that FAFSA or NJACAC as soon as possible. One thing I will note, this pops up quite a bit with the FAFSA. You will see when you complete your FAFSA in particular that you can choose up to 10 schools to send it to. But you may be thinking, what if I'm applying to more than 10? Not a problem, that's okay. You're going to be entering your first 10 schools. You are going to submit it. You're going to give it just a couple days so it transmits. They'll send it to all of the colleges that you listed the first time, and then you can go back in, clear out that list, and add in more schools. I know that one pops up quite a bit, so I just wanted to mention that one there. Other thing I'll note with this, some schools do require the FAFSA or NJACAC to award other institutional aid, and this can even be merit-based awards. I've seen that happen. It tends to be more with need-based awards, but you want to make sure, again, that you're being considered for anything you might be eligible for. So please fill out that FAFSA. Even if you think that you may not qualify for need-based aid, that's okay. The worst thing they can say is no. Additionally, anyone who is completing the FAFSA is eligible for federal direct loans. I know Chris talked about that quite a bit, and I'll touch on that more as well. But if you are going to be taking out loans, which you do not have to do, but the federal loans are the safest ones to take out. They're the ones with the lowest interest rates as well. So get off my soapbox on that one. I like to make sure that everybody, please apply. Some important terms just to cover, because these ones pop up quite a bit, and I know they can be a little bit confusing for families. The first thing I think some folks have probably heard of, expected family contribution. You guys may have seen in the news in the past, I think it was about 6 months or so, I think it happened over the summer, and so it'll be changing a little bit in coming years. But it's essentially a number that's used to determine your eligibility for certain financial aid programs. So it is calculated by the FAFSA. The thing we always like to make sure that students know, when you see that EFC number, that's not the number that your family is going to have to pay. It's not the amount of federal student aid you're going to receive. It's essentially this index number, what they're using to determine if you're eligible. So I know that one gets a bit confusing. Same thing with the New Jersey Eligibility Index. Same idea. It's not the amount you're going to have to pay. It's not the amount of aid you're going to receive. It's two numbers for both NJEI and the EFC. Both of those together are going to determine your financial need and ultimately your cost of attendance. So I like to throw those out there because sometimes the EFC can be a little bit a little bit confusing and intimidating at first. And then lastly, you'll hear us talk about quite a bit financial aid package or your financial aid offer. That's the amount of financial aid that you are receiving from an institution. All right, we touched on these ones quite a bit. Chris covered these beautifully. So we have our gift aid. This is the best kind of aid. You don't have to pay it back. So need-based grants, scholarships, outside scholarships, all of this free money. I'm not going to belabor this point too much, but one thing I will note for scholarships, if you are awarded a scholarship through an institution, first question you want to ask them, is it renewable? Is this just a one-year scholarship? Is it for 4 years? What happens if for some reason I need to stay longer than 4 years? What if I'm here for 5? What happens then? Additionally, are there certain requirements that I need to meet in order to renew it? Do I need to have a certain GPA? Do I need to stay within a certain major? Do I need to stay within a certain academic school? All of these are good things to ask just so that you can really understand what you can expect to pay and what your financial aid is going to look like, not just this year, but for your entire career at that institution. Right, and loans, again, loans must be paid back. These should be kind of the last resort. You do not necessarily have to be taking out loans in order to pay for your education. Keep in mind as well, you are paying not just the original amount of the loan, the principal, you're also paying interest. You're going to be essentially building up interest on that loan, depending on which kind of loan you take out, will depend on when that interest starts. Or will determine when that interest starts, but something to keep in mind as well. It's not just the cost of the loan, you're going to be looking at additional interest on top. And then lastly, earned aid. So we talked about this one, work study, part-time jobs, either on or off campus. So there is a federal work study program for students that qualify for that. Many schools also offer work study positions that are not federally funded. So if you're not necessarily qualifying for federal work study, you may still have an opportunity to work on campus as well. So definitely good news there. And then in terms of the way that this aid is paid out, that is coming directly to you in a paycheck, which is a little bit different than, say, a grant or a scholarship or a loan. All right, so I'll pop through some of these as well. In terms of things that you're going to be seeing on a financial aid offer letter, it's going to vary a little bit depending on which school you're looking at, but these are really common things that you are most likely going to see there. Your estimated direct and indirect costs, the grants and scholarships that you are offered, yay, free money, any sort of federal work study that you may have been awarded, loans that are offered to you. Some schools may also include other options for you in terms of financing your education, next steps, as well as a glossary, what all of the terms included in their offer letter mean. So to give you just kind of a peek at ours, again, this will look different depending on the different schools that you are looking at. This is what ours looks like, specifically looking at the estimated direct and indirect costs. As we said earlier, direct costs are things that the college is charging you, things like tuition and fees and housing and dining. Those are the things that are going to show up actually on your bill. But as we know, that's not the whole cost of going to college, right? There are other things. There are things like books, or how do I get to campus? I'm going to need to pay for parking or pay for gas. So the indirect costs are going to be estimated on your financial aid package as well. So you can see those here. I know this one oftentimes throws students off as well because they may think that this is something that the school is charging them. It's not. We are trying to make sure that you have a good understanding of what you can expect to pay, because we do know that it's more than just tuition, fees, and housing. All right, you're going to see a section on any sort of financial aid that you were awarded as well, grants and scholarships. So these should always be separate than loans. They may not be, I will warn you, occasionally loans are lumped in there as well. Many schools will separate that out. That's generally best practice. But you're going to see your grants and scholarships. We can see for this student's, in this student's fake case, this isn't a real student, but you can see they received a grant from the institution. This is coming directly from the college. They were eligible for a federal Pell grant, and they were also eligible for tuition aid grant as well. So they'll give you the total of that. And then you will see as well, it's also including an estimated cost of attendance here. So with that, subtracting out your total grants and scholarships from the cost of attendance, you're going to see a net cost. And you should see this on all of your awards as well. Again, keep in mind, occasionally schools will lump in loans in terms of the offer as well. So something to keep an eye on as you're calculating that and what you ultimately might pay. Just kind of a quick note just on things specific to Rutgers, although some of these are federal and state programs as well. Federal Pell Grant, so up to about $6,500. Federal SEOG, Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, as well as up to $4,000. Those would be awarded through the FAFSA, if you are completing the FAFSA. New Jersey also has some wonderful, wonderful financial aid as well for this New Jersey Tuition Assistance Grant tag. So these are the numbers for Rutgers. I will tell you, since it's the Tuition Assistance Grant, the amount can vary depending on the institution that you're attending. So this number may be a little bit different. Educational Opportunity Fund. This is a wonderful program. It provides not just financial support, but academic and social support for students as well. Can be up to $2,500. I know we talked about NJ Stars as well, Governor's Urban Scholarship. This one I'll just hit really quickly because it's new, actually. There are actually two programs through this, but with the Garden State Guarantee, you can potentially go to county college and then move into a four-year college as well. Some of these are still being ironed out. I know they are here at Rutgers. Some other schools may be a little bit farther on in that process, but this is a new program within the state of New Jersey. And then lastly, this is institutional Rutgers Merit and Grant. Here, Rutgers does have scholarships as well. They are heavily based on your GPA, your grades, as well as test scores if you choose to submit them. We are a test optional institution for fall 2022. Stay tuned for later years. We're hoping to have an answer for you soon. And we do have grants as well, need-based grants. All right, and then work study. So I know I kind of glossed over this earlier. You should see this separated on your financial aid award as well. One thing I will note is for federal work study, many schools do have an additional application, and that's essentially so they can match you up with a job. So there is typically one extra step there. I know we do have that here at Rutgers as well. If a student is awarded federal work study, they just need to complete that work application so that we know where to place them, and they are really applying for a job. It is a real life job. And as I mentioned, those funds are paid to you through a paycheck. All right, so we hit on this one earlier too, federal direct loans and other loans. So big thing here, federal direct loans, those are some of the safest to take and with the lowest interest rate. Difference here between subsidized and unsubsidized loans, because you may see that on your financial aid package for any institution. A subsidized loan is where the government is paying the interest on that loan for you while you are enrolled in school. An unsubsidized loan is where they are not paying that interest. For an unsubsidized loan, as soon as you take that loan out, it is going to start accumulating interest. So good thing to know there. In terms of the amount for these loans, everyone who fills out the FAFSA essentially is eligible for $5,500 for their freshman and sophomore years. For junior year, it goes up to $6,500, and senior year goes up to $7,500. So again, these are some of the safest loans to take. I always like to make sure students really understand that as opposed to a private loan. And you can see here as well, other options for students, other ways that they may be paying for their education as well, searching for outside scholarships, Parent Plus loan as well is another very popular one. All right, here you go. We hit on these as well. Interest rate at the moment, and this was this last award year, but they were at 3.73%. To give you a contrast for some of these private loans that you may be applying for, those can be 9–10% at times. So definitely much lower on the interest rate through that federal direct program. And then lastly, for these ones, no payment is required until 6 months after you leave school, or if you're dropping below a half-time status. So this is your undergraduate career. This does also count if you move on to graduate school as well. That being said, there is nothing to say that you cannot start paying on these loans right after you take them. So if you have the ability to do that, if you're going to be taking out loans, always a great thing. Even if you're just paying off some of the interest that's accruing, that's going to ultimately reduce the total amount that you're going to pay for your education. So something to think about if you are actually looking at those loans. One thing I'll note here, some of these are specific to Rutgers, but other schools will have this as well. Occasionally, you may need to change your information, right? The school, you may need to update whether you're living on or off campus. They will also ask if you want to decline work study or decline or reduce your federal loans. Here at Rutgers, we do have a data change form that you can do that through. Many institutions will have that in an online form. It may be a paper form. If there's anything that you may need to change, please reach out to that financial aid office. You want to make sure that they have the most up-to-date information for you so that all of your financial aid offer is correct. All right. And then the more options, I kind of touched on this briefly. There are Parent Plus loans. That is a federal loan, and it does go through studentaid.gov. That is the same as the FAFSA. The interest rate for that is a little bit higher, so you will see that. And the excuse me, approval is based on credit history. So good things there. I know I talked about private loans as well. Always good to be reviewing the loan term periods if you are taking out your loan, so you know exactly what you're going to need to be paying back and when. Last thing I'll touch on, this is my last slide. This one is kind of specifically to Rutgers, but I like to make sure students know, if you didn't receive an offer letter from an institution, let them know. Reach out to them. It's possible that either your FAFSA wasn't transmitted, or maybe they reached out to you for more information, and it could have gone to your spam or your junk inbox. Definitely reach out to the school if you have any questions. All schools generally are posting their time frame for financial aid packages, and I will say it varies quite a bit by institution. I have worked at institutions that started releasing decisions in November, and actually were able to give out financial aid offers in November with the offer or the admissions letter. Most institutions do not do that, just to manage expectations, but you may see it. I know here at Rutgers, they tend to go out late February, early March. So you'll see quite a bit, but all of us will have that posted so you know what the timeline is. And if you are not getting it in that time frame, let us know. We want to make sure that we are getting your financial aid package awarded so that you know as soon as possible what you might expect to pay. Last thing, so I'll flip over. This is our financial aid office information. Certainly you can contact our admissions office as well. Last thing I'll note just with financial aid offers is compare them, right? Compare them in between institutions. The candidate reply date is not until May 1, and many schools will accept them later than that, but generally it's May 1, which should give you plenty of time to collect all of the offer letters for every institution that you've been admitted to and see what you're going to pay. While you're doing that, what I want you to do is take a look at your actual cost of attendance. So it's not necessarily the tuition, it's not necessarily the size of the scholarship that you were awarded. What really matters is what you're actually going to pay. So I know for Rutgers, I would love to tell you that as a state institution, we will always be the cheapest because our tuition is lower. I know that that's not true for every student, and we know that we're not the best financial fit for every student. What we want is to make sure that you are picking the institution that is the right financial fit for you. Financial aid offices are a wonderful, wonderful resource for you when you're trying to make those determinations. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, not just to Rutgers, but to Stockton, to Caldwell, to any institution that you're applying to. Please reach out to us. We want to help. With that, I will stop sharing. I hope I didn't go too over. What can we tell you guys? Do you guys have questions? You guys have the Q&A function. We would love to tell you more. Okay, so we have a question. I can give an answer for Rutgers, and I'm sure Stockton's is a little different. Someone asked, could you please give a quick summary of what's the process for applying for a scholarship? Does an essay need to be written? I know this is not going to be the most satisfying answer. The answer really is that it depends, and it depends on the institution. So I know here at Rutgers, as long as you apply by December 1, you're automatically considered for scholarships, but that is not necessarily the case. Other schools may have an additional application, or they may require that essay.
So at Stockton, a part of the application is to complete your application is the essay. And I know a number of students really get kind of confused as to what they should write, or, really like, oh, I don't know what to share. And it is really you sharing your information. Everybody has a story, and any information that you can give the admissions committee that will provide us a little bit more detail about who you are, the things that, you've accomplished, whether there have been some obstacles or some, struggles that you may have had, all of those things make up a person. And so we really like to get to know our applicants here. And so don't shy away from, applying to university just because there's an essay that's required. Really, and I'm speaking for, all schools, really, even if it is optional, you should still provide, a personal statement, because I think that does go a long way, even if it's an optional on the application. But yes, to complete your application, we would need the essay as a part of the scholarship. An essay is not required. You are reviewed for an admission as well as scholarships with the initial admissions application.
Thank you. And I would just remind everyone to keep using the Q&A button for any questions for our panelists. Well, thank you for joining us tonight on this session regarding New Jersey financial aid. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 5-question survey, and we appreciate any feedback you can provide. We encourage you to check back on the schedule and sign up for many other sessions happening both tonight and over the next 2 days. And remember, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all of the other sessions recordings at strivescan.com/New Jersey. Thank you everyone for participating and have a great night.